Assuming that you make it to 80, the average human lifespan is only 4,000 weeks. Go beyond that and it's unlikely that you'll be fully functional at best. What's scary is that after finishing 3 degrees to become an architect, I was 26 years old, I'd used up 1,352 weeks of my life, and I now had exactly 728 weeks to go before reaching this self-prescribed definition of success before the age of 40. The world of productivity and time management seems to be the only logical answer to this problem, as the formula is pretty clear. The more that you get done, the faster you get to making all of your dreams a reality. But in the last couple of years, I've realized that when it comes to my work, no matter how much that I get done, it never seems to be enough. So when feelings of guilt, anxiety, and a caffeine dependence started causing me vertigo, I knew that I had to change my approach. So here are 5 things that I've learned about productivity that were making my life significantly worse. The problem with productivity isn't that productivity hacks don't work, it's that they can work a little bit too well. You may be familiar with Parkinson's law, the rule that work expands so as to fill the time available for its completion, and you've probably experienced this if you've ever managed to get a superhuman amount of work done the night before a deadline. So I thought that when optimizing my life for productivity, it only makes sense to try and do this regularly through strict self-inflicted deadlines that ensures that the work gets done in record time, and it usually does. But it's also usually at the cost of a boatload of stress and anxiety that only piles up over time. What's really interesting about this phenomena is something that I realized reading Oliver Burkeman's book 4,000 Weeks. It's that Parkinson's law also works the opposite way around. Even if we do complete a deadline in record time, we've essentially freed up time in the future, so there's inevitably another task there just waiting to fill that space, because we have a much larger goal that we're working towards, and we're so hung up on maintaining this state of peak productivity. Because of this, it's no wonder that it's common to hear about people getting burnt out, and it makes me wonder what this is really doing to our health and quality of life. In his book, Burkeman says, in a world with dishwashers, microwaves, and jet engines, time ought to feel more expansive and abundant, thanks to all the hours freed up. But this is nobody's actual experience. Instead, life accelerates and everyone grows more impatient. So despite how much time we may save with technology and productivity hacks, it's really important to figure out when it's time to get off the treadmill, because this sense of doing enough never really comes. Productivity undoubtedly helps us get a lot done, but when optimization becomes such a big part of your life, it can be incredibly toxic. For instance, we may find ourselves thinking about work when we're with friends or with family because of how much we could be getting done with the time instead. And I definitely can confess to this because I started realizing at one point that it was difficult to sit down with Nisha to watch a movie because I didn't think it was a productive use of my time, which is kind of ridiculous. It's unfortunate that this kind of thinking often gets romanticized in hustle culture, and it encourages us to cut people out of our lives completely in order to chase a desire that we've set up for ourselves in the future. I've found that this kind of mindset starts to suck the life out of everything, and it also leads us to experience things like returning from holidays without actually feeling rested, as we've began to plan them around how much we can get done rather than just going in order to enjoy the moment, which is definitely a mistake that I've made in the past. What happens is that in an attempt to master our time, it ends up mastering us, because when there's always something to be done or something that we could improve, it becomes incredibly hard to be present. So an unchecked productivity mindset can quickly start to suck the life out of everyday experiences that we should otherwise be enjoying. Oliver Burkeman also says that instead of simply living our lives as they unfold in time, it becomes difficult not to value each moment primarily according to its usefulness for some future goal, or for some future oasis of relaxation you hope to reach once your tasks are finally out of the way. Which brings us to the next point. So why do we have this desire to be productive in the first place? The chances are that you have ambitions, and we work towards those ambitions using productivity as the vehicle to get us there. But the result of working towards our desires is that we often become incredibly impatient and busy, and this usually surfaces as the phenomena of time going by faster and faster and faster the older that you get, as work weeks just passed in a flash and we realize that we have less and less time to get to our desired destination as external pressures such as family and financial security start mounting. It's easy for us to actually end up living our entire lives this way, chasing a certain goal or desire, but actually it's the perfect recipe for burnout, anxiety, guilt, and worse still, severed relationships and poor health, which is probably the exact opposite of our intended desire for happiness in the first place. It's kind of ironic that our goals and desires normally stem from this desire to be happy, but essentially when we continually desire anything, by thinking of it as some sort of destination, we're actually keeping ourselves from ever experiencing it. There's this quote from Naval Ravikant that really sums it up well, in saying that desire is a contract that you make with yourself to be unhappy until you get what you want, which is why it's so crucial to figure out how to enjoy the journey rather than just focus on the destination. Even though we may realize this, it's interesting to ask the question as to why some of us still cling to unhealthy work lives even though we know that they're ruining our health and our relationships. The philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche best described this mindset in Untimely Meditations, saying, "We labor at our daily work more ardently and thoughtlessly than is necessary to sustain our life, because it is even more necessary not to have leisure to stop and think. Haste is universal because everyone is in flight from himself." When we're in this state of obsessive productivity, we don't really have to think about whether we've made the right decision in our career paths or not, or deeper still, what the meaning of our existence is. Often our self-worth is so tied to our work that we just keep doing it, and if we actually stopped and took a moment to reassess our decisions, it would probably be too scary. Even mentioning this sounds incredibly morbid, but the Stoic phrase memento mori, which means remember that you have to die, is so crucial to wake us up out of this funk. And it's why often when you meet people who have had near-death experiences or have lost a loved one, their outlook on life is often drastically changed. And this is probably because when you remember that you could die at any minute, it really puts things into perspective. And despite it sounding somewhat depressing, it actually forces us into a mindset of gratitude for our experiences, whilst forcing us to address difficult questions, which I believe makes for a much more fulfilling and meaningful existence. Finally, when we've cultivated this kind of productivity mindset, we often provide ourselves with this illusion that we have control over things like our choices, our finances, and our security. When we labour thoughtlessly at our tasks, we often think that we're in control as long as we just keep going, but this really couldn't be further from the truth. Life is unpredictable and often isn't able to be controlled, so when things go sideways and our mindless productivity doesn't work out as well as we thought it would, the result to our well-being is that we often get stressed and we feel terrible because the illusion of control begins to slip from our reach when in our heads it shouldn't have, and we're just left in this state of anxiety whilst we try and play catch up to all of our tasks. It's a bit of a paradox that the more you try to control things in order to reduce frustration and stress, the more frustrated and stressed that you tend to feel. The more you hurry, the more frustrating it is to encounter things that won't be hurried. And it's also a paradox that the more individual control you exert over your life, the lonelier that you tend to get. But when you face the fact that you can't control things, the better your quality of life becomes, which is why there's that well-known quote in regards to our external circumstances, which says that when you try to control everything, you enjoy nothing. Obviously, we're all wired differently, so if you haven't experienced anxiety or emptiness around your work, you probably don't have anything to worry about. But what I've realized is that what matters when it comes to our work is that we do it all with intention, rather than just defaulting to social norms or productivity or hustle culture. If we're intentional about what we want, we'll probably realize that being on a journey that we have peace with is much more important than hustling towards a desired destination. And when we stop to ask ourselves difficult questions about life and success, we may realize that deep down we do have a toxic desire to keep up with the Joneses, or that we attach too much of our sense of self-worth to our work. The goal of this video isn't to say that productivity is inherently bad, because it does play a really important role in our lives, and I think that cutting it out completely would be highly detrimental. But I think that when you take it too seriously, it can start to creep into your downtime. I've found that it helps to take things a little bit slower to give myself more time to reflect on things, and I've found that it helps to ensure that my work stays meaningful and not just highly productive. Anyways, I really hope that you guys got some value out of this video. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.